What's good with the YouTube of Convicts Perspective? It's your boy, Big Flacco. As always, I'm smashing, I'm dashing, I'm sliding on through with a little bit of energy. Respects to everybody out there in YouTube Landia. What's cracking, bro? Let's get to it, man. We're going to discuss something that's been asked several times on the channel. We've seen it in the comments. We've seen other people do videos on it, man. So we found an interesting article that talks about Yogi Pinell. One that was instrumental in the San Quentin Six, as we all know about the issue with George Jackson and others at that time. He was a very revolutionary leader at one time within the B.G.F faction. His death came at the end of all hostilities as soon as he hit the main line. And this goes into some interesting details. And as always, man, I'm going to do a quick disclaimer. I don't know a lot of the history behind Yogi. There's certain things I've learned from different people doing research. So there may be some discrepancies to truth, but at the same time, we're going to give our convicts perspective on this.
No doubt. This article is from September 27th to 16, and the title is "The State is Sued Over Murder of San Quentin Six Inmate." Sacramento, California. Revered by civil rights activists for his role in California's 1960s prisoner rights movement and one of the San Quentin Six, Hugo Pinell was assassinated days after being released into a general population yard. In 2015, after 43 years of solitary confinement. Pinell's murder sparked a massive riot at the California prison and left his family questioning why the 71-year-old inmate who was serving multiple life sentences was ever allowed on that prison yard. Claiming that it was a setup by California prison officials, Pinell's daughter sued the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation in federal court, claiming wrongful death as well as negligent supervision on Friday. Born in Nicaragua, Hugo Yogi Pinell was convicted of rape at the age of 19 and was sentenced to life in 1965. He soon gained notoriety for his role in a botched 1971 San Quentin prison escape that left 6 people dead, including 3 prison employees and the Black Panther Party activist and inmate George Jackson. And what was at the time the longest trial in California history, with more than 23,000 pages of testimony, a Marin County grand jury convicted Pinell on 2 counts of felony assault by a prisoner serving a life sentence. The jury deliberated for 24 days and returned 6 of the 46 charges against the San Quentin Six. Pinell was given a 3rd life sentence for slitting 2 officers' throats during the failed prison escape. Pinell languished in solitary confinement for decades before he was released into the general population at California State Prison, Sacramento, in August of 2015. According to the complaint, the former Black Panther Party member was killed by 2 white inmates in a supposedly racially motivated attack 50 years after first being incarcerated. Just 5 days before he was killed, he was released in the general population, despite the fact that prison officials supposedly knew that he was targeted by other inmates, Allegra Casimir Taylor says in her complaint filed on behalf of herself and Pinell's estate. They were aware of multiple credible death threats against Pinell, including a threat issued by the Aryan Brotherhood. Pinell's fatal stabbing incited a prison riot at the 2,300 inmate maximum security prison outside of Sacramento. About 70 inmates were involved, with 29 sustaining injuries, according to prison officials. Jason Weaver and Waylon Pitchford are awaiting trial for Pinell's murder, with an October 28th hearing scheduled at Sacramento County Superior Court. Weaver was previously convicted of assaulting another inmate, while Pitchford is facing charges for another inmate assault as well, according to the complaint. Casimir Taylor says the Department of Corrections knew Pinell was a target for assassination and risked his life by placing the elderly inmate in general population. She's suing the state for punitive and exemplary damages for failing to protect Pinell. Reportedly, prison officials placed bets on how long Pinell would survive being in the general population.
Wow.
9-page complaint states. Casimir Taylor's attorney, Ashley Amirio, did not return an interview request Thursday. CDCR spokeswoman Terry Thornton declined to comment on the litigation, saying the department hasn't been served with the federal lawsuit at this time. After Pennell was transferred in 2014 to the maximum security facility adjacent to the notorious Folsom Prison that Johnny Cash famously played for inmates in 1968, Casimir Taylor says she visited him every weekend. Pennell was an important figure in his daughter's life, and during the visits encouraged her to renew her vigor in performing charitable work. In an article published in the San Francisco Bay View, an inmate claiming to be one of the last people to see Pennell alive says the murder was coordinated by the Department of Corrections. About the time I did reach Yogi, it was too late. Dragging him away from his killers, Yogi's eyes were wide open and he took his last breath. His eyes seemed to say it all. I've done my part, young brother. The rest is on you, Devin Bush wrote on January 30th.
Interesting article, brother. You know what I mean? You know, the Black Guerrilla family, the Black Liberation Army, the Black Panther Party, man, what people failed to realize, man, is especially with the B.G.F prison, I'm going to sit there. I have no exact date of when they were established, brother, but I'm going to say between 71 and 72 is the time frame that you know what I mean. I've talked to a couple people, man. There's no exact time frame that I know of. You know what I mean? The difference between the B.G.F and groups like the AB, the NF, and the MA is their whole sole objective and ideologies was basically a political radical movement for rights as African Americans, and because at that time frame they were suffering a lot of the oppression that was directed by staff. There was a lot of association with staff and Aryan Brotherhood inmates as well as the MA, just based upon that alliance. So the B.G.F was never really traditionally I know we used to refer to them as the Big Four, but they were never technically really a criminal organization until later on down the lines. You know what I'm saying? As far as the rackets, in the beginning, they were a revolutionary movement, and he was very instrumental in all that. I mean, I don't know, I can't confirm or deny if he was a Black Panther Party member. I don't know that as a fact. I do know that he was strongly affiliated with the B.G.F. We do know that. The San Quentin Six, we know about that incident. You know what I mean? We know about the Black August, all these issues that occurred. And in fact, there was actually a Mexican mafia member that was involved in that San Quentin Six, or an alleged Mexican mafia. Let me clarify that. You know what I mean? As far as Bala Vato, you know what I mean? Luis Dalamates. They all pushed that revolutionary line for radical change, for prisoner rights, and that was the whole objective. That's a time era when there was so much, corrupt correctional officers. There was a lot of abuse going on back then, man. I don't think people understand. You know what I mean? And for this man, he did his time, 50 years in the system, man. There's a lot of different things that have been put out there about this incident. You know what I mean? Some have, I don't know the truth of it. Let's just be clear. We do know what happened. The Sudanos formed a wall, basically a diversion tactic. You know what I'm saying? They went and handled their business, and a riot ensued after that, and there were some issues afterwards. And the shocking factor about this, right, is that this occurred 5 days after the end of all hostilities, after he got hit the main line. You know what I'm saying? He was not on the main line that long once he was released from the SHU. So my question posed on this, the first thing I'm wondering is, why did this death even occur? If there was an end to all hostility agreement, you know what I mean, within all those factions up there in Pelican Bay to get out there to the main line, why would this have even been tolerated? Why would this have even been accepted? I would think that this would have been basically, it would have just ended everything right there and then, at least on the African-American side, because there was some alleged B.G.F members that were on that into hostility claim, as there was NF members, there was MA members, and there was AB members. So you're going into a thing with a mutual agreement. Now, some say these are allegations. This doesn't make sense to me, but there's been allegations that Yogi was cell soldiering. The dude's been in the system for about 50 years. You know what I mean? He's a convict. I don't see that type of style from someone like him. You know what I mean? Based upon his reputation. You know what I mean? There's been other rumors that this was basically a ploy and this was an agreement when they did the end all hostilities. I don't really believe that because I don't think anybody would throw their own people under the bus. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of questions. And the main question I have about this is I think that I really believe that CDCR had a lot to do with this issue. I think they knew this was going to happen. I think that because of his past actions, hitting 2 guards and all the stuff that he did all throughout the years, standing against the system and his beliefs, I wouldn't be surprised if this whole scenario was a setup.
Yeah, I might have to agree with you, although that would not be based on any factual evidence I've read or heard, or
Yeah.
anything that's been proven through any kind of trials to my knowledge. But at first, when I first heard about the story, 5-6 years ago, I was thinking that maybe he had fallen out of favor with his own people, and they were just like, well, they're gonna get him. Fuck it. There's a lot of unknowns, man. That's a group that not a lot is current about them, as their numbers and their power have been
Yeah.
so drastically reduced over the last, ever since the early 80s. No insult, no slight intended, they haven't really been relevant as far as being a major organization. And like I said, that's with no malice. I say that's just the facts. There's very, very, very few of them guys left. If he fell out of his favor with the own group and they were like, well, the white boys still want to get him, and oh well, that saves us from having to do it. There's so many different logical things, you know what I mean, that
Yeah.
could actually be the true reason. I don't know the results of the trial. I don't know what was determined there. I believe that they did get paid, didn't they?
I don't know the results of that, man, but
We're gonna have to look that up, man. But definitely they're probably never gonna be able to prove the real reason. Only a couple people know that. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
eventually it's going to all come to light. You mean?
Yeah,
I
there's
mean,
all kinds of hypotheticals.
think about it. If something, okay, look, regardless what people think of Cornell or DC or anybody like that, right? If something would have happened to them 5 days after them getting released, there would have been hell to pay. You know what I'm saying? Now it's different if it's your own people dealing with it. You know what I mean? You don't ask those questions. But as soon as another group or another race takes those kind of actions, that's a declaration of war. You know what I'm saying? He, based upon his identification and what he aligned with, you know what I'm saying? I mean, that group paved the way for a lot of African Americans in the system that now have their own functions behind the walls, whether it be the Crips, the Kumis, and so forth. Before they even existed, there was the B.G.F that paved the way for the, you know what I mean, for the rights of all Black inmates in the system. So regardless of what you may feel, there's been issues between the B.G.F and Crips on the yards back in the 80s. You know what I'm saying? As well as, Kumi and B.G.F have gone at it. Regardless what you feel about them as individuals, you would think that there would be at least a little bit of tribute and respect, especially for an old timer like that. Pay homage, that you wouldn't allow his sacrifice throughout the years, whatever you may feel about the man, personally, or their group. You would think that, okay, you know what, regardless, this is our people. We're going to jump off after, which they did jump off, but you would think that there would have been a wave. To me, I don't know. That's what I'm saying. There's so much unknown questions, you know what I mean? And it just goes to show a lack of respect for that particular group. Let's just keep it real. Because damn well ain't nobody going to do that to no Corny. They ain't going to do that to no Skip. They're not going to do that to DC or anybody without expecting the repercussions for that from the group as a whole. You do that to any of those dudes, every fucking Pintas are going to be ready to die.
Yeah.
That's when something like that happens to an OG from that era, man, that's going to inspire anybody. So you didn't have that same traction from this particular groups, and no disrespect to any of them. That's because there's a lot of dissension and division within these groups. They all independently work and have a whole different political structure. Doesn't mean that they're not with the shit, because a lot of them are with the business and will handle it, man. A lot of them I rocked side by side with it that have assisted me to the fullest. But as far as an overall spectrum of things, they don't align with the same beliefs as far as jumping off continuously for their people. You know what I mean? If this would have been one of their old time AB members too, would have been the same thing. They would have kept it cracking everywhere. So, we can discuss theories, perspectives, and so forth, but regardless, I have a hard time understanding it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I heard the different things. I heard how it did crack off afterwards, but how, when you're working towards the end of all hostilities, why was he out there for only 5 days? We don't know. Maybe he became a JCAT in his old age. You know what I'm saying? And was cell soldier. I don't know. We really don't know. But I know a lot of people who have done time with him in the shoe that had nothing negative to say about it. You know what I mean? A lot of them old school JAMA cats, man, they were all in that Marxist movement. You know what I mean? They had a whole different type of ideology system. You know what I'm saying? Everything to them. And we adapted a lot of things from them, as well as they adapted a lot of things from us. And what I mean by that is what we were past affiliated with. You know, they were the ones that pushed that line against the system. They were the forefront runners. And they did have alliances at one time. I mean, they were all inmates were pushing at one time in the 70s, believe it or not, regardless of the NF-MA conflict and NF-AB conflict. There was a time when you had MA members that were sympathetic towards B.G.F members. You know what I'm saying? In this struggle, in that strife. You know, but as always, man, I've always believed that, with all the conflict of war that happened for years, I really think that it was always in C.D.C's best interest to keep us at war and in conflict with each other. Because as a united front, like you've seen with the end all hostilities, right? You know what I'm saying? You can see when you're working together, you can create change against the number one enemy. Everybody's number one enemy is always going to be the oppressor, those that are holding you down, those that are taking your rights and privileges and incentives as an inmate. So I don't know if this maybe even was created by, there's a lot of things we could sit there and throw out there. Like, I mean, was this a setup? Was this staged? Was the AB really after him? You know what I mean? Did someone pay some money? We don't know. You know what I mean? Something doesn't sit right with the scenario, though, that he was only out there for 5 days and another race was able to hit him.
Yeah, you would think that even after all them years, I mean, that happened way back in the 70s with that whole, botched escape attempt and the hostage being taken, et cetera, the guards being killed, inmates being shot. All that stuff was a long time ago, man, but people got a long memory. With C.D.C, individual officers still feel some certain type of way. I would say, yeah. You know what I mean? And, regardless of credible threats and this and that, whereas they might not be complicit in the actual act itself, they could have been unconcerned with any of the information that they had received that this dude was in danger of being targeted for removal.
And you know what though?
It was, oh well.
I mean, what prison has been under the most scrutiny the last 5 years? New Folsom has. You've had one correctional officer who overdosed and died, and who was on leave, who was having issues, who was being hazed, and then you had another one who just recently allegedly committed suicide, who was a whistleblower as well. So there's been a whole lot of red flags around. I mean, I know in the 90s you had the green wall that was going on in the late 90s and early 2000s, Greenwall and Salinas Valley. There was the issues in courtroom with the stage fights. Now it seems like there's been a lot of issues occurring in New Folsom. You know what I'm saying? Over the last 4 years. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's a hard scenario to make sense, man. It's something that I've been trying to grasp my head, man. I've heard other people talk about it. I've talked to other people. I talked to P&G News Media about this, who's done some research with a lot of B.G.F members. No one really has the answer. Even those that are still active B.G.F members really have the answers to what really happened with them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the thing about the institutions, all the different prisons in California and whatnot, we always hear, when there's inmates, doing certain things, whatever, and facing new charges. A lot of the times, man, the press releases aren't going to be the same when it's staff involved. You know what I mean? Because they're allowed to keep it, sort of under wraps because it's an ongoing investigation or an internal matter, however they decide to paraphrase it. You know what I mean? So, when things get out, usually they are pretty significant things that by law or whatnot, or even by California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation policy must be, the subject of a press release about. There's still a lot of things always going on that we don't hear about. I mean, these institutions, all of them have, 1,000 correctional officers and free staffs working at them. There's always going to be issues with that amount of people. You know what I mean? There's going to be bad apples. There's going to be this. There's going to be things that are going on that aren't supposed to, whether it be smuggling, arranging things, illegal activities, staging things, allowing things to happen that by law or by morals that they shouldn't. We only see a fraction of those, and we're only able to go off what we see. But there's all kinds of things going on. And could this be a cover up? Yeah, or not a cover up, but a setup? It's hard to say. Could it be a blind eye? I
Yeah,
very easily see that because
they
people
didn't
have
care
a
about it.
long-term memory. A couple of ours died in this, even though they never knew them. They were their dad's age, whatever the case might be. People don't forget.
Let me ask you something. What do you feel that what do you feel like as far as this act happening 5 days after he hit a main line? Isn't that an act opposite of the end all hostilities by this taking action?
Yeah, you would think that would have, they fought hard and went through all them changes to acquire that whole release from the shoe and the long-term validations and all that. And for this to happen so soon after they were actually released, man, it seems like that would be putting that whole thing that they strived for in jeopardy right away.
Not only that, bro. He was a warrior in his time, right? But even warriors in your time, when you get 71, I'm gonna say something right now, may piss off a lot of people. How much honor and respect do you deserve hitting that 71-year-old man and taking him out? Come on, man. Come on now. There's no respect behind that. You know what I'm saying? None at all. You know what I'm saying? I don't care how big of a guerrero warrior you were in your day, how many burpees you were doing all these years. Time catches up with you, man.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so there has to be more, man. I've heard different rumors, different theories, different issues,
There's
man.
more.
But you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? It just there's something that just doesn't sit right with the scenario. Man, maybe a viewer out there is gonna relinquish that to us, man, and keep it real. What really happened? You know?
No, there's definitely a lot more, man, because you're like you were just saying, you're not gonna feel threatened or whatever by some 70-year-old dude, man. There's a reason that happened, 100%.
He
Will
was
it ever will
definitely
it
he was
ever come
definitely a
out,
beast.
man? It's hard to say.
You know what I mean? He was definitely a beast in his time. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Except for what Michael Thompson tried to say, but you know what I mean? He beat up 70 NF members. You know what I mean?
yeah.
You know, and let me. I know people may say this, right, and we don't know. I don't condone this, and like I said, I don't accept anybody that has any type of charge like that. Period.
Yeah.
Okay, but two things we're going to sit there and say. One, this is a different time era, and we do not know if he was set up or staged because of his political beliefs. That used to occur back in the 60s. Based upon him being an African American, they used to set up people with different charges, allegations, just to get them behind the walls, especially if you were trying to focus on political rights. So we do not know if he was guilty of that case or if he was set up. 1965, guys, different time era. He may have been set up. As well as we got to keep it 100. There was people that had those charges that were members of all these organizations back in the time that were accepted back then. Different time era. I don't believe in it. I can't stand people with those charges, but I know people are going to question that and they're going to comment that. We do not know the details behind that alleged case as a 19-year-old kid. You know what I mean? He could have been sleeping with a white woman and someone got mad about it. You know what I mean? It could be anything. We do not know. You know what I'm saying? Because there was a lot of people being set up during that time era. So before people go to judge, well, he had that charge. We do not know the details behind it. You know what I mean?
Charges
Prison,
from back then, especially after against someone who was so involved in, anti-system, anti-white
yeah,
establishment, anti-this, anti-that. Back then, it wasn't nothing uncommon to be like, well, here you go then.
yeah.
Here's 15
So,
years
so,
for you.
so we're not saying that he's
Yeah.
guilty or innocent of that. We do not know. So I know people have said that before. Well, he had this on his jacket. Well, we don't even know if that was legit. It was 1965.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Remember, it was a very racial divided country at that time still. Some parts of that country, you still couldn't go into certain restaurants and bathrooms in other states. You know what I mean? And just because California was a little bit more open, there was still a lot of racism and prejudice going on in this country. So I just want to throw that out there, man. You know what I mean? I don't know the man. You know what I'm saying? For some reason, he was accepted and liked within his people and was a warrior within the system. So that's just something I wanted to address for anybody that maybe, we're hearing this article, hearing that charge. You know what I mean? You know,
The one thing that does stand out to me though is that, you know, as the daughter claimed that there was numerous credible threats on his life. If that happens to anybody in the system, usually they slam you. You know what I mean? Until you can prove, or you sign a waiver, or you do whatever. Doesn't seem like none of that was done. You know, like if there's a credible threat, if somebody says, hey, they're gonna kill this dude, whatever, dude, they took me to the hole in Susanville because they said my presence, basically my presence disturbed the white boys because I ran with the homies. And
You would think
they took my ass to the hole and kept me there till I paroled.
I mean, but this is what's weird, bro, is a
And they
lot of
weren't,
people,
and them dudes weren't gonna do shit.
hey, Rojo, I mean, either he was really a nuisance and still had level 4 points. I mean, how much damage can you really do? You know what I'm saying? While you're locked up in the shoe. So I question that because I know a lot of people that were put on in Solano and Pleasant Valley because their points had dropped. You know what I'm saying? They overrided a lot of these cats from level 2 to level 3s that were coming out the shoe that were validated because they didn't want to put them out there in them dorms yet. You know what I'm saying? So that question, that the dude's been down for 50 years. Was he a disciplinary problem the last 10, 20 years? Were his points that high to be put on a level 4 yard?
Probably just from back and forth bickering with staff and their animosity towards him for the figurehead he was. You know, whereas we might argue with staff and they don't really have nothing really against you, they just walk it off. He probably got the 115 every time.
Well, yeah, the San Quentin 6 made him target anywhere he went because that is probably something that they train every newly hired correctional officers about the San Quentin 6 because that's a historical thing. You know what I mean? You type in San Quentin 6, you'll get all kinds of articles about that. You know what I mean? George Jackson, you type that in, Black August, all these issues, you're going to get all kinds of historical standpoints from it. So he's one of the ones that's within that tier that they're going to see. So I could see no matter what, even if you're 18, even if you're like in your 20s, a new fucking correction officer, you know about the San Quentin 6. They're going to teach you that in the academy, period. You know?
Yeah, I mean, you look at this, man, if you just put hands on a staff, it's going to be bad for you everywhere you go.
Oh yeah.
You're gonna, the cuffs are always going to be extra tight. You know what I mean? It's going to be bad for you. Even in the county jail, bro, you put hands on one of them deputies, everywhere you go, bro, you're going to have a bad time. You know what I mean? Your commissary is not going to, just simple things like your commissary got lost, you know, your pictures are on the ground with boot prints on them. I mean, imagine, you know, that was a major act that him and them other individuals committed.
Yeah, historic. It's a historical act, man. It's one of those ones that they made poems and stories about, man. Like, you know what I mean? You know, I don't know his true, you know, I don't know if he was affiliated with the Black Panther Party beforehand or if that's media propaganda. I don't know his back history. You know, you're going to hear all kinds of different theories, man. But we do know that he was a revolutionary activist. We do know he was a B.G.F affiliate. We do know that for a fact. You know, all his predated stages and that's the one group that I'm not as historical. My historical facts about that and understanding is very limited as far as who the key players and roles and all that, man. But I do know that he was a key figure within that group.
No doubt. Anyway, YouTube, that's just a little bit about Yogi, man. You know, was his own people responsible for basically just surrendering him? Was the AB responsible for a long outstanding grudge? Was C.D.C responsible? We don't really know, man. If anybody knows anything more than we do, leave in the comments, man. We're curious. And we will follow this up with the results of that, you know, basically civil trial, you know, trying to get some compensation because of the claim, the lack of appropriate measures being taken by C.D.C. But leave us a comment, man. Tell us what you think, man. Who do you think was responsible? If you were there, get at us. Have a good day. Enjoy your weekend. Today's Friday. And we'll be back at you a little bit later on. We appreciate you.